Kim Seo-jun ended the date before the dessert arrived. The model sitting across from him was still smiling, still mid-sentence, still performing perfectly when he gently placed his napkin on the table.
I think that's enough.
I think that's enough for tonight. She blinked, caught off guard for half a second before recovering. Oh, already? Her tone stayed light, polished, controlled. Everything about her was flawless. Her posture, her voice, the way she tilted her head just slightly when she spoke. Seo-jun had seen it all before. Too many times. I have an early morning, he said calmly. It wasn't a lie. But it wasn't the reason either. The waiter hesitated when Seo-jun stood up. Sir, your dessert. Cancel it. The model let out a small laugh, trying to soften the moment. You're very direct. Seo-jun gave a polite nod. I prefer not to waste time. That was the end of it. No argument. No emotion. Just a clean exit. 20 minutes later, Seo-jun sat in the back seat of his car, staring out at the passing lights of Seoul. His phone buzzed. Another message from his assistant. Tomorrow's schedule confirmed. Final pre-opening walkthrough at 9 a.m. All teams ready. He didn't reply. Instead, his gaze drifted slightly, unfocused. The date had gone exactly as expected. No discomfort. No connection. Just another evening carefully arranged for appearances. The next morning, everything was perfect. Exactly how Seo-jun liked it. The hotel stood tall and silent, sunlight spilling across its glass exterior like it had something to prove. Inside, staff moved with precision. Every detail in place. Every surface flawless. Seo-jun walked through the main lobby, his pace steady, his expression unreadable. Executives followed a step behind him, offering updates he barely acknowledged. VIP confirmations are at 98%. The press preview has been rescheduled to, the sent profile has been adjusted based on your feedback. He nodded once. That was enough to keep them talking. But his attention wasn't on them. It was on the space itself. Something felt off. Not wrong. Just empty. Music. The word came without warning. The team paused. Yes, sir? The sound director responded quickly. Seo-jun glanced upward slightly. It's not working. The director frowned. We're using the final approved composition. I know. Seo-jun's tone didn't change. That's the problem. Silence followed. No one rushed to respond this time. They had learned. When Seo-jun said something wasn't right, it wasn't. He walked further into the lobby. The music played softly in the background. Technically perfect. Emotionally distant. Like it was designed to impress, not to be felt. Seo-jun stopped walking. Turn it off. The music cut immediately. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. He didn't like that. Sir, his assistant said carefully, stepping closer. There is one option. Seo-jun didn't look at him. Say it. There's a consultant we've used before. Not directly for this kind of project, but... Seo-jun finally turned his head. Then why are you bringing it up now? Because she doesn't approach things technically. That was a risk. Suggesting something outside of Seo-jun's structured system usually was. But, the assistant continued, she works with atmosphere, experience, emotional response. Seo-jun held his gaze for a second, then asked, name, Daisy Smith. That meant nothing to him. Where is she? London. Color. Daisy didn't answer the first time. Or the second. By the third call, she finally picked up. Hello? Her voice was calm, unrushed. Miss Smith, this is... I know who this is, she said gently. You've called 3 times in a row. It usually means something's wrong. The assistant glanced nervously at Seo-jun. He nodded once. Put it on speaker. Miss Smith, the assistant continued. We have an urgent situation regarding a hospitality project in Seoul. I don't do rush fixes. Her tone wasn't rude, just firm. We're willing to compensate. It's not about the money. Seo-jun stepped forward slightly. Then what is it about? There was a brief pause on the line. Not awkward, just thoughtful. And you are? She asked. Kim Seo-yeon. Another pause. Slightly longer this time. Not because she recognized the name, but because she was deciding something. Tell me what's wrong, she said. Seo-jun didn't explain everything. Just enough. The space is perfect, he said. But it doesn't feel right. On the other end, Daisy exhaled quietly. That's a strange problem. I don't deal with ordinary ones. That almost sounded like confidence. Almost. She asked a few questions. Short ones. How long has the issue been noticeable? Since final integration. Did you test it with real people or simulations? Simulations. Of course. Seo-jun's eyes narrowed slightly. You have an opinion about that? Yes. She didn't hesitate. Simulations don't tell you how people actually feel. They tell you what you want to predict. Silence settled on the call. Seo-jun didn't interrupt. I can be there tonight, Daisy said finally. The assistant blinked. That quickly? I was planning to travel anyway. That wasn't entirely true, but she didn't explain. That night, Daisy walked into the hotel like she had all the time in the world. No rush, no hesitation. She didn't look impressed. That was the first thing Seo-jun noticed. Everyone else always did. She stepped into the lobby, stopped, looked around slowly. Then she said, quietly, "It's beautiful." A few staff members relaxed slightly. Until, she added, "But it doesn't feel like anyone belongs here." That erased the relief immediately. Seo-jun walked toward her, measured, controlled. Then fix it. Daisy turned to face him properly for the first time. She studied him briefly. Not his suit, not his status, just him. You're the one in charge? Yes. She nodded once. Then you're the problem. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the air seemed to tighten slightly. Seo-jun didn't react the way people expected. He didn't get angry, didn't dismiss her. Instead, he looked at her more carefully, like he had just found something he didn't expect. Explain, he said. Daisy stepped further into the space, calm, unbothered. You built this place to impress people, she said. Every detail is controlled. Every feeling is calculated. That's the point. No, she replied. That's the mistake. Seo-jun folded his hands loosely behind his back. And what would you do differently? Daisy glanced around again, then said, I'd make it human. That word lingered, unfamiliar in a space like this. Seo-jun studied her for a moment longer, then gave a small nod. You have until morning. Daisy didn't react to the pressure, didn't ask questions, didn't negotiate. She simply said, Good. As she walked past him, Seo-jun spoke again. You didn't ask who I am. Daisy stopped briefly, then turned her head slightly. I'll figure that out if it matters. Then she kept walking, leaving behind something subtle, something quiet, something Seo-jun hadn't felt in a long time. Interest. For the first time, something in his perfectly controlled world didn't follow the rules. And instead of fixing it, he found himself watching it unfold. By midnight, the hotel no longer felt like a showroom. It felt unsettled, not broken, not chaotic, just in transition. Daisy had asked for one thing the moment she started working. Turn everything off. The lighting system, the music, the scent diffusers, all of it. The staff hesitated. They had spent months perfecting those systems. Turning them off felt wrong. Seo-jun didn't hesitate. Do it. Now the lobby sat in a soft, unfinished quiet. Only the natural hum of the building remained. Daisy walked slowly across the marble floor, her steps unhurried, her attention focused on details no one else seemed to notice. She stopped near one of the walls, ran her fingers lightly along the surface, then looked up at the ceiling. You layered too many decisions on top of each other, she said. Seo-jun stood a few steps behind her. Everything here was intentional. That's exactly why it doesn't work. He didn't interrupt. She moved again, this time toward the center of the room. People need space to feel something, she continued. You didn't leave them any. Seo-jun tilted his head slightly. That doesn't explain the discomfort. It does, she said. You just don't like the explanation. There was something about the way she spoke. Not challenging. Not defensive. Just certain. Daisy turned to one of the technicians. Bring back the lighting, but not the programmed version. The technician blinked. What do you mean? Manual control, she said. Lower it gradually. He looked at Seo-jun. Seo-jun gave a small nod. Do it. The lights came back slowly. Not in perfect synchronization this time. Softer. Uneven in a way that somehow felt intentional. Daisy watched carefully. Stop there. The technician froze. The lobby settled into a warm, dim glow. It wasn't as sharp as before, but it felt easier to stand in. Seo-jun noticed it immediately. The tension he hadn't been able to name earlier. It wasn't there anymore. Daisy crossed her arms lightly. Now the music. The director stepped forward. We'll restart the final track. No. She shook her head. Play something unfinished. He frowned. Unfinished? Yes. Something with space in it. There was hesitation again. Seo-jun spoke before anyone else could. Do it. A different track filled the room. Slower. Less polished. Not designed to impress. Designed to breathe. Daisy closed her eyes briefly. Listening. Better. Seo-jun watched her. You didn't fix anything, he said. I didn't need to fix it, she replied. I needed to remove what was getting in the way. He considered that. You're saying less is more. I'm saying control isn't the same as intention. That stayed with him. Hours passed without either of them noticing. Staff moved in and out quietly, following Daisy's instructions. Adjusting, testing, stepping back. At some point, Seo-jun's assistant approached him carefully. Sir, should I arrange rest for Miss Smith? Seo-jun glanced at Daisy. She was standing near one of the lounge areas now, adjusting the spacing between chairs. No, he said. Let her work. Daisy didn't look tired. Focused, yes, but steady, like she was exactly where she needed to be. Around 3 a.m., she finally stepped back, looked at the space again, then nodded once. That's enough for tonight. Seo-jun walked closer. And tomorrow? We refine, she said. Right now, it just needs to breathe. He looked around again. The difference was clear now. Not dramatic, but real. Why does this matter to you? He asked. Daisy glanced at him briefly. It's my job. That's not what I asked. She held his gaze for a moment, then said, because spaces affect people more than they realize. He waited. She continued. Most people don't notice why they feel comfortable somewhere, or why they don't, but it always comes from something. Seo-jun nodded slightly. And you can control that. I can guide it, she corrected. Control is temporary. There it was again. That quiet difference in perspective. He looked at her more carefully this time. You've done this before. Many times. Then why haven't I heard of you? Daisy smiled faintly. Because I don't work for attention. That answer felt honest and unfamiliar. There was a short pause before Seo-jun spoke again. You should get some rest. Daisy shook her head. I'll stay a little longer. He didn't argue. Instead, he said, I'll stay too. That surprised her. Just slightly. You don't have to. I know. Neither of them explained it further. They ended up in the unfinished lounge area. No formal setup, just temporary seating and low lighting. Someone had left takeout boxes on a nearby table, cold by now. Daisy walked over, opened one, and glanced inside, then looked at Seo-jun. You eat like this often? Not usually. She picked up a pair of chopsticks. Tonight seems like an exception. She sat down casually. No hesitation. No formality. Seo-jun remained standing for a moment. Then, after a second, he sat across from her. Daisy tasted the food. It's not bad. That's a low standard. It's a realistic one. There was something easy about the moment. Unexpectedly easy. Seo-jun watched her for a second. You didn't react when you found out who I am. Daisy looked up. I told you, she said. I'll figure it out if it matters. And now? She shrugged lightly. You're the reason this place feels the way it does. He leaned back slightly. That sounds like criticism. It is. No hesitation. No softening. But her tone wasn't harsh. Just clear. Seo-jun nodded once. Most people wouldn't say that to me. Most people want something from you. And you don't? Daisy met his gaze directly. No. That answer landed differently than he expected. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daisy tilted her head slightly. You're very serious. Seo-jun didn't react much. I've been told that. You don't smile much either. That's not part of my job. She laughed quietly. Not loud. Not exaggerated. Just natural. Seo-jun paused, watching her. There was something about that sound. Unfiltered. Uncalculated. You should try it sometime, she said. Smiling? Yes. I'll consider it. She shook her head lightly. I don't think you will, he almost responded. Almost. Instead, he said. We'll continue in the morning. Daisy nodded. All right. They stood at the same time, walked back toward the lobby. The space felt different now. Warmer, quieter, alive in a way it hadn't been before. Daisy slowed her steps slightly, looking around one more time. Seo-jun noticed. You're not done. No, she said, but it's getting there. He followed her gaze, then said, It feels better. Daisy looked at him briefly. Better isn't the goal. What is? She turned her attention back to the space. Real. That word stayed with him. As she walked toward the exit, Seo-jun spoke again. Daisy. She stopped, turned slightly. He held her gaze for a second, then said, Good work. It was simple, but genuine. Daisy smiled faintly. See, she said, you can do it. He frowned slightly. Do what? She tilted her head. Sound human. Then she walked out. Seo-jun stood there for a moment, looking at the space, then toward the door she had just exited through. Something about her presence lingered. Not overwhelming, not distracting, just noticeable. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't thinking about perfection. He was thinking about feeling. And that was new. The next morning, Seo-jun arrived earlier than usual. Not because he needed to, but because he wanted to see the space before anyone else touched it. The lobby was quiet again. Soft light settled across the floor, warmer than the day before. Nothing dramatic had changed overnight, but the difference was still there. Subtle. Steady. He stood in the center of the room, looking around slowly, trying to understand what exactly she had done. Or maybe what she had removed. You're checking if it still works. Her voice came from behind him, calm, awake, like she had been up for hours. Seo-jun turned slightly. Daisy walked in, holding a coffee in one hand, her pace relaxed. You're early, he said. So are you. She stepped beside him, her eyes moving across the space the same way they had the night before. Focused. Present. Well? She asked. Seo-jun didn't answer immediately. Then, it still feels different. Daisy nodded once. Good. She took a sip of her coffee, then added, Now, we make it consistent. The team arrived shortly after. More cautious this time. Less confident in their original, perfect system. Daisy didn't give long speeches. She gave small instructions. Shift that seating slightly. No, not symmetrical. Let it breathe. Lower the lighting there. It's too intentional. Leave that corner alone. It doesn't need to be fixed. Seo-jun watched everything, not interrupting, Not correcting, just observing. At some point, one of the designers approached him quietly. "Sir, should we still follow the original blueprint?" Seo-jun glanced toward Daisy. She was adjusting a table slightly, focused, unaware of the conversation. "No," he said. The designer hesitated. "Completely?" Seo-jun's tone stayed even. "Follow her." That spread quickly. Not loudly, but enough. By midday, the hotel no longer looked like a showroom. It looked lived in. Not messy. Not imperfect. Just human. Daisy stepped back at one point, scanning the lobby. Then she nodded slightly. "Better." Seo-jun walked over. "You say that often." "Because improvement doesn't happen all at once." He studied her for a second. "You don't aim for perfect." "No." "Why?" Daisy looked at him like the answer was obvious. "Because perfect doesn't last." That answer stayed with him longer than expected. Later that afternoon, they moved to one of the upper lounges, a quieter space, designed for privacy. Daisy walked in and immediately noticed the difference. "This one's worse." Seo-jun raised an eyebrow slightly. "Worse?" "It feels controlled in a different way." She walked toward the windows, looked out over the city, then turned back. "Who designed this section?" "One of our senior architects." "He's very talented." "That sounds like a compliment." "It is," she said. "But he doesn't trust people." Seo-jun crossed his arms lightly. "And you can tell that from a room?" "Yes." She walked back toward the seating area. "This space doesn't invite anyone to relax," she said. "It expects them to behave." Seo-jun exhaled quietly. "You read too much into things." Daisy smiled faintly. "And you don't read enough." There it was again. That balance. She didn't push, but she didn't step back either. They spent the next few hours adjusting the lounge. Less structure, more flow. At some point, Daisy sat down to test the space. She leaned back slightly, looking around, then nodded. "Now it works." Seo-jun remained standing. "You decide that quickly." "I feel it quickly." He walked closer. "Explain that." Daisy tilted her head slightly. "You've been in places where you didn't want to leave, right?" He didn't answer, but his silence was enough. "That's not an accident," she said. "It's created. And you create it. I help it happen." He watched her for a moment, then said, "You speak like it's something intangible." "It is." She stood up again. "Not everything important can be measured." That line stayed with him. Evening came faster than expected. The staff began wrapping up for the day. But Daisy didn't seem in a hurry to leave. She moved through the lobby one more time, adjusting small things, barely noticeable things. Seo-jun found himself following her again. Not intentionally. It just happened. At one point, she stopped near the center again, the same spot as the first night. She looked around, then said quietly, "It's close." Seo-jun stepped beside her. "Close to what?" She glanced at him briefly. "Feeling right." There was a pause. Not empty, just thoughtful. Then Daisy turned slightly toward him. "You've been watching everything." Seo-jun didn't deny it. "Yes." "Why?" That question stayed between them for a second. Then he answered honestly, "Because I don't understand it yet." Daisy studied him for a moment, then smiled just a little. "That's a good place to start." They stood there for a few seconds longer, the space around them quiet, settled. Then Daisy spoke again. "You don't trust things you can't control." Seo-jun looked at her. "That's not unusual." "No," she said. "But it's limiting." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he asked, "And you? You trust everything?" Daisy shook her head lightly. "No." "Then what do you trust?" She thought about it for a second, then said, "Consistency." Seo-jun frowned slightly. "In people?" "In energy," she said. "In how something feels over time." He considered that. "And this place?" he asked. Daisy looked around again, then back at him. "It's starting to feel consistent." That answer did something unexpected. It made him relieved. They didn't speak for a moment after that. Then Daisy walked toward the exit again. Seo-jun followed a few steps behind. When they reached the entrance, she stopped. "You should go home," she said. He looked at her. "I can stay." "I know," she replied, "but you don't need to." There was something different in her tone. Not dismissive, just certain. Seo-jun nodded once. Then, without thinking too much about it, he said, "Have dinner with me." Daisy raised an eyebrow slightly. "That sounds like work." "It's not." She studied him for a second, then asked, "Is this something you usually do?" Seo-jun didn't hesitate. No. That answer mattered more than anything else he could have said. Daisy looked at him for another moment, then nodded once. "All right." Uncomplicated. Seo-jun didn't react outwardly, but something shifted again. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just a step forward. As they walked out together, the hotel behind them no longer felt like a project. It felt like something that was slowly becoming real. And for the first time, Seo-jun wasn't focused on controlling the outcome. He was curious to see where it would go. Seo-jun didn't take her to one of his usual places. That was the first difference. The driver slowed down in front of a quiet restaurant, tucked between two modern buildings. No flashing lights, no cameras, no line of people trying to get in. Daisy noticed immediately. "This doesn't look like your type of place." Seo-jun stepped out of the car. "It isn't." Inside, the atmosphere was calm. Soft lighting. Low conversations. No one turned to look at him. That alone made the space feel different. Daisy walked in behind him, taking in the details. "Good choice," she said. Seo-jun glanced at her. "You approve?" "I don't think you brought me here for approval." "No," he said. "But I'm still interested in your opinion." They were seated near a window. The city lights stretched quietly outside, distant enough to feel separate. A waiter approached. Seo-jun didn't open the menu. "The usual," he said. The waiter nodded and left. Daisy rested her elbow lightly on the table. "You come here often?" "Yes." "And no one bothers you?" "No." She smiled slightly. "That explains it." Seo-jun looked at her. "What does?" "You don't like being watched." He didn't respond immediately. Then, "I don't like being expected to behave a certain way." Daisy nodded slowly. "That makes more sense." The food arrived quickly. Simple dishes. Nothing overly styled. Just well-made. Daisy tasted one of them. Her expression shifted slightly. "Okay, this is better than I expected." Seo-jun leaned back a little. "That sounds like you doubted me." "I did." There was no hesitation in her answer. He almost smiled. They ate for a few minutes without speaking. Not uncomfortable, just quiet. Then Daisy looked up again. "You don't usually do this." Seo-jun met her gaze. "Do what?" "Sit across from someone without checking your phone, giving instructions, or leaving early." That was specific. "I told you," he said. "This isn't usual." She studied him for a second. "Why me?" The question landed simply, but it carried weight. Seo-jun didn't rush to answer. "You're honest," he said finally. Daisy raised an eyebrow slightly. "That's your reason?" "It's rare." She tilted her head. "That sounds like a problem." "It is." Another quiet moment passed between them. Daisy took another bite, then said, "You're not as cold as people think you are." Seo-jun's expression didn't change much. "And how do people think I am?" She shrugged lightly. "Controlled, distant, predictable." "And you disagree?" Daisy looked at him directly. "I think you're used to being seen that way." That answer stayed with him. Not an accusation. Not a compliment. Just an observation. "You read people quickly," he said. "I listen more than I talk." "That hasn't been my experience so far," he said. She smiled faintly. "That's because you keep asking questions." That was fair. Seo-jun rested his hand lightly against the table, watching her. "You don't ask many." Daisy met his gaze. I don't need to. Why not? He asked. Because people usually show you who they are without realizing it. That was a quiet statement, but it carried certainty. Seo Jun looked at her for a moment longer. And what have I shown you? He asked. Daisy didn't answer immediately. She considered it carefully. You're tired, she said. That wasn't what he expected. Of what? He asked. She leaned back slightly. Of maintaining something that doesn't feel natural. Seo Jun didn't speak right away. Because she wasn't wrong. He had just never heard it said that way before. Daisy watched his reaction, then softened her tone slightly. That doesn't make you weak, she added. It just means you're human. There was that word again. Human. He exhaled quietly. You use that word a lot. Because people forget it. He nodded slightly. I don't forget, he said. Daisy tilted her head. Then why do you avoid it? That question stayed in the air. Seo Jun didn't answer directly. Instead, he shifted the conversation. You said earlier that spaces affect people, he said. What about people? Daisy smiled faintly. They do the same thing. He waited. She continued. Some people make you feel like you have to perform. Others make you feel like you can just exist. Seo Jun's gaze didn't leave her. And which one am I? Daisy held his gaze for a second, then said, You're trying to figure that out. That answer felt accurate. The conversation slowed again after that. Not because there was nothing to say, but because neither of them felt the need to fill every second. At some point, Daisy reached for a napkin the same time Seo Jun reached for it. Their hands brushed lightly. Both of them noticed. Neither of them reacted immediately. But something shifted again. Subtle. Unspoken. Daisy pulled her hand back first. Not quickly. Just naturally. Seo Jun watched her for a second. Then said, You're not uncomfortable. Daisy looked at him. Should I be? Most people are. She shook her head slightly. I don't see a reason to be. That answer landed quietly. Seo Jun leaned back slightly, studying her again. There was something different about this. No tension. No expectation. Just ease. As the dinner came to an end, the waiter approached again. Seo Jun paid without looking at the bill. They stood up at the same time. Outside, the air was cooler. The city quieter than usual. Daisy glanced around briefly, then looked back at him. This was nice. Seo Jun nodded once. Yes. They stood there for a moment longer than necessary. Then Daisy said, I'll head back. Seo Jun looked at her. I'll have the driver take you. She shook her head. I'd rather walk. He frowned slightly. It's late. I'll be fine. She said it with enough certainty that he didn't argue. Instead, he said, Then I'll walk with you. That surprised her. Just slightly. You don't have to. I know. Same answer as before. Daisy studied him for a second, then nodded. All right. They started walking. No rush. No destination being forced. Just the quiet rhythm of footsteps matching naturally. And for the first time, neither of them felt like they needed to be anywhere else. The streets were quieter than usual. Not empty, just calm enough that the city felt like it had slowed down. Seo Jun walked beside Daisy without saying anything at first. No need to lead. No need to direct. Just matching her pace. Daisy noticed. You're not used to this. Seo Jun glanced at her. To what? Walking without a plan. He considered that. I usually have one. I can tell. There was a small smile in her voice. Not teasing. Just observant. They continued walking, the sound of their footsteps blending with the distant hum of the city. After a while, Seo Jun spoke again. You said earlier that some people make others feel like they have to perform. Daisy nodded slightly. Yes, and others don't. She looked ahead. Right. Seo Jun slipped his hands into his coat pockets. Which one am I now? Daisy didn't answer immediately. She took a few more steps. Thinking? Right now? She said. Yes. She glanced at him briefly. Right now you're not trying to make me anything. Seo Jun nodded slightly. And that's different? Yes. Clear. They walked a little further. A light breeze moved through the street. Daisy adjusted her sleeve slightly. Seo-jun noticed. Without thinking too much about it, he slowed down a bit, just enough to match her more comfortably. She noticed that too, but didn't say anything. There was something about the silence between them. Not empty, not awkward, just easy. Daisy stopped near a small intersection, looked around briefly, then stepped toward a quieter side street. Seo-jun followed. "This way's shorter," she said. He nodded once. The street was lined with smaller buildings, less polished, more lived in. Daisy glanced at one of the storefronts as they passed. Closed for the night. Lights dim. "I like places like this," she said. Seo-jun looked at the same storefront. "Why?" "They don't try too hard." He considered that. "You prefer simple things." Daisy shook her head lightly. "I prefer honest things." That word again. Honest. Seo-jun looked ahead. "Most things aren't." Daisy glanced at him. "They can be. People just complicate them." He didn't argue, because he understood what she meant. They kept walking. At some point, Daisy slowed down slightly, not stopping, just taking her time. Seo-jun adjusted without thinking, matching her pace again. She looked at him briefly. "You notice small things." He frowned slightly. "Like what?" "Like when someone's walking slower." He didn't respond right away. "Then, I pay attention." Daisy nodded. "That's rare." "Is it?" "Yes." Another quiet moment passed. Then Daisy spoke again. "You're different outside of work." Seo-jun glanced at her. "How?" "You're less structured." He thought about that. "That's not something people usually say." "They don't see this version of you." He looked ahead again. "And you do?" Daisy smiled faintly. "I'm starting to." That did something to him. Not obvious, but noticeable. They reached a quieter part of the street. Less light, more stillness. Daisy slowed down again, then stopped. Seo-jun stopped with her. "This is me," she said. He looked up at the building in front of them. "Nothing extravagant." "You're staying here?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded once, then looked back at her. "Is it comfortable?" Daisy smiled slightly. "It's real." That answer felt like something only she would say. Seo-jun studied her for a second. "You use that word a lot too." "Because it matters." He nodded. There was a moment where neither of them moved. Not because they didn't know what to do, but because neither of them seemed in a hurry to end it. Daisy shifted her weight slightly. "You should get some rest," she said. Seo-jun looked at her. "I will." But he didn't move yet. "Instead," he said, "tomorrow, we'll finish the remaining spaces." Daisy nodded. "All right." Then she turned slightly toward the entrance. But before she could take a step, Seo-jun spoke again. "Daisy." She paused, turned back. "Yes?" He held her gaze for a second, then said, "You're easy to be around." It wasn't something he said often. Maybe never. Daisy blinked once. Not surprised. Just processing. "That's a good thing," she said softly. "It is." Another quiet moment passed. Then Daisy smiled slightly. "You're not as difficult as you think you are." Seo-jun let out a small breath. Almost a quiet laugh. "I didn't realize I was difficult." "You are," she said. "Just in a controlled way." He nodded. "That sounds accurate." She turned toward the entrance again, then stopped. Looked back one more time. "Good night, Seo-jun." He held her gaze. "Good night." She stepped inside. The door closed softly behind her. Seo-jun stood there for a moment, looking at the entrance. Then he turned and walked back the way they came. The street felt different now. Not quieter, not louder, just more noticeable. He slipped his hands into his pockets again. And for the first time in a long while, his thoughts weren't filled with plans, or strategies, or expectations. They were filled with something simpler. The way she spoke, the way she moved, the way she didn't try to be anything other than herself. And how easy it felt to be around her. That was new. The next morning came quickly. But something had shifted. Not in the hotel. In him. When Seojun walked into the lobby again, his focus wasn't just on the space. It was on whether she was already there. And when he saw her, standing near the center again, adjusting something small, he felt something settle. Not excitement. Not tension. Just quiet recognition. Daisy looked up as he approached. "You're early again." Seojun nodded once. "So are you." She smiled slightly. "Looks like we're consistent." He held her gaze for a second, then said, "Let's finish this." But his tone had changed. Softer. Less about the project. More about the moment. And Daisy noticed. Even if she didn't say it, the lobby felt different on the third day. Not because anything dramatic had changed, but because Daisy had stopped adjusting everything and started refining only what mattered. Seojun noticed that immediately. She wasn't moving around the space constantly anymore. She stood still more often, listening, watching, thinking less about control, more about flow. "You've changed your approach," he said. Daisy didn't look up from the small control panel she was adjusting. "I've understood the space better." "That's not what I meant." She finally glanced at him. "I know." That was all she said. Then she went back to work. Seojun stood a few steps away, watching her. There was something different about her presence now. Less like an outsider fixing a system. More like someone shaping something she had started to care about. At some point, one of the junior designers approached him. "Sir, should we continue following Miss Smith's adjustments exactly?" Seojun didn't hesitate. "Yes. And if it conflicts with the original concept?" He looked toward Daisy. She was now speaking quietly with a sound engineer, pointing at subtle frequency shifts. Then the original concept was wrong. The designer froze, slightly, but nodded and walked away. Daisy didn't hear the exchange. Or maybe she did. She just didn't react. Later that afternoon, they were alone, in the lounge again. The same space they had slowly rebuilt together. It didn't feel like a project anymore. It felt settled. Daisy sat on the edge of a low chair, reviewing something on a tablet. Seojun stood nearby, not checking his phone, not leaving, just there. "You're quieter today," she said without looking up. "I'm observing." "That sounds like you every day." He nodded slightly. "True." Daisy finally looked at him. "You don't talk much when you're thinking." "I talk when I need to." "And when do you need to?" Seojun paused. That wasn't a question he usually answered honestly. "Rarely," he said. Daisy studied him for a moment, then leaned back slightly. "You're not as closed off as people think." He raised an eyebrow slightly. "And what do people think?" "That you decide everything before you even enter a room." Seojun didn't respond immediately, because she wasn't entirely wrong, but she also wasn't entirely right. "Do you think that?" he asked. Daisy considered it, then shook her head. "No." That answer came too quickly to be dishonest. Seojun stepped a little closer. "Then what do you think?" Daisy looked at him directly. "I think you react more than people realize." That made him pause. "React?" "Yes," she said. Just quietly. He looked at her for a second longer, then exhaled slightly. "That's an unusual interpretation. It's an honest one." There it was again. Honest. The word that kept showing up between them. Daisy stood up slowly, stretched slightly, then picked up her tablet again. "You should sit down," she said. "I'm fine." "You always say that." Seojun gave a faint look. "And you always disagree." "Because you don't look fine." That made him stop. Not because it was harsh, but because it was simple. Daisy walked past him toward the window. The city stretched outside, calm in the afternoon light. "I think you forget to pause," she said. Seojun followed her with his gaze. "I don't need to." Daisy turned slightly. "That's not true." He didn't answer, because this time, he didn't have a quick response. There was a short silence. Not heavy, just reflective. Then Daisy said something softer. You're here all the time now. Seo-jun looked at her. I have work here. That's not what I meant. He understood what she meant, but didn't say it. Instead, he asked, And you? Daisy tilted her head slightly. What about me? You're still here too. That made her smile faintly. I'm paid to be. Seo-jun stepped closer again. Is that the only reason? Daisy met his gaze. For a second longer than usual, then she said, Yes. But it didn't sound fully complete. Before he could respond, one of the staff members interrupted gently. Miss Smith, the sound calibration in Section 2 is ready for review. Daisy nodded. I'll be there in a minute. The staff member left. Seo-jun stayed where he was, watching her. You're needed, he said. Daisy looked back at him. Always. Then she started walking away, but stopped after a few steps, turned back slightly. You're coming? Seo-jun didn't hesitate. Yes. They walked together, again, side by side. But something about the air between them had shifted. Not loudly, not visibly, but enough that even silence felt different. Later that evening, after hours of adjustments, testing, and small refinements, the space finally reached a point where no one spoke for a while. Not because they were waiting, but because nothing needed to be said. Daisy leaned lightly against one of the counters. You know, she said, this place is finally starting to feel like it belongs to people. Seo-jun stood beside her. Because of you. She shook her head slightly. Because of adjustments. That's not what I said. Daisy glanced at him briefly, then looked away. Don't start assigning credit. He didn't argue, but he didn't agree either. Instead, he said, You've been here longer than planned. Daisy nodded. I know. And you're staying longer again? Yes. Why? That question lingered longer than usual. Daisy didn't answer immediately. Then she said quietly, Because it's not finished. Seo-jun studied her. That's the reason? She nodded. Yes. But this time, it felt like there was something unspoken underneath it. Something neither of them had named yet. Seo-jun looked away first, then said, We should take a break. Daisy blinked slightly. A break? Yes. From work? From adjustments? From everything structured around them. Daisy looked at him for a moment, then nodded slowly. All right. That was it. No argument. No negotiation. Just agreement. They ended up sitting together in the nearly finished lounge. No tools. No staff. Just the space as it now was. Daisy leaned back slightly. This is the first time I've actually sat here. Seo-jun looked around. So have I. She turned her head slightly. You've been here the whole time. That's different. How? I was working. Daisy smiled faintly. And now? Seo-jun didn't answer immediately, then said, Now I'm here. That was the closest thing to a confession either of them had made so far. The room stayed quiet after that. Comfortable. Unforced. And somewhere in that silence, something began to lean forward between them. Not rushed. Not declared. Just inevitable. Daisy shifted slightly, then looked at him. You should stop calling me Daisy so formally. Seo-jun raised an eyebrow slightly. What should I call you? She hesitated just a second, then said, Whatever feels natural. That was dangerous advice. He looked at her for a moment, longer than usual, then said softly, Okay. Nuna. Daisy froze. Just for a second, then turned her head slightly toward him, slowly, like she wasn't sure she heard correctly. What did you just call me? Seo-jun didn't look away. You're older than me. Her expression shifted. Just a little. Just enough. That's not something you say so casually. It felt natural. That did it. Daisy looked away quickly, trying not to show it. But the faint color in her face betrayed her anyway. She was blushing. Seo-jun noticed. And for the first time, he didn't hide the fact that he noticed. He just watched her, quietly. And something unspoken settled between them. The space around them didn't feel like a project anymore. It felt like the beginning of something neither of them had fully stepped into yet, and neither of them was walking away. The word didn't leave the room after he said it. It stayed. Quiet. Unavoidable. Daisy didn't look at him immediately. She focused on the space in front of her, like she was trying to regain control over something small. "You shouldn't say that so easily," she said. Her tone wasn't sharp, just careful. Seo-jun leaned back slightly, watching her. "Why?" She let out a soft breath. "Because it changes the dynamic." He considered that. "And that's a problem?" Daisy turned her head, finally looking at him. "It can be." Seo-jun didn't look away, but it didn't sound like one. That landed. Daisy held his gaze for a moment longer than she meant to, then looked away again. "You're observant," she said quietly. "I pay attention." I noticed. Silence settled again, but it wasn't the same kind of silence as before. This one carried awareness. Seo-jun spoke again, softer this time. "I won't use it if you don't like it." Daisy shook her head slightly. "That's not what I said." He waited. She hesitated. Just a little. Then said, "It's just unexpected." Seo-jun nodded once. "That's fair." Another quiet moment passed. Then Daisy said something that surprised even herself. "You can say it." Seo-jun's gaze shifted slightly. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Yes." There was no teasing in her voice. No hesitation left. Just acceptance. Seo-jun leaned back slightly, his expression softer than it had ever been. "All right, Nuna." This time, Daisy didn't look away as quickly. But the warmth in her face was still there. She was blushing hard. And Seo-jun didn't pretend not to notice. Neither of them said anything for a few seconds, because nothing needed to be added. The shift had already happened. The next few days moved faster than expected. Not because the work was rushed, but because everything started to fall into place. The hotel was ready. Not perfect, but real. Daisy walked through the lobby one last time before the official opening. Her steps slower, more deliberate. Seo-jun followed a few steps behind. Not directing, not correcting, just there. "You're checking everything again," he said. Daisy nodded. "Not everything." "Then what?" She looked around. "The feeling." Seo-jun stopped beside her. "And?" Daisy smiled slightly. "It's consistent." That word again. He let out a quiet breath. "Then we're done." Daisy looked at him. "Are we?" There was something in her tone. Not about the project. Seo-jun understood. "Yes," he said. But neither of them moved. Because finishing the project meant something else was ending too. Or changing. The doors opened later that evening. Guests began to arrive. Carefully selected. Well-dressed. Expectant. But this time, the space didn't feel like it was trying to impress them. It welcomed them. People settled in naturally. Conversations flowed. No one seemed rushed. No one seemed out of place. Seo-jun stood off to the side, watching. He didn't need feedback. He could see it. It worked. But his attention shifted quickly. Because Daisy wasn't next to him. He scanned the room. Found her near one of the quieter corners. Watching the same thing he was. He walked over. "You're observing again," she said. "So are you." Daisy smiled faintly. "Old habits." Seo-jun stood beside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he said, "They look comfortable." Daisy nodded. "They are. That's because of you." She shook her head lightly. "That's because you let go." Seo-jun glanced at her. "That wasn't easy." "I know." That answer came without hesitation. He looked at her properly. "You made it easier." Daisy held his gaze. "I didn't do anything." "You did." That stayed between them. Unargued. Unresolved. But understood. The room filled slowly as the night went on. Laughter. Soft conversations. Movement that felt natural instead of staged. Seo-jun looked around one last time, then back at her. "It feels right." Daisy nodded. "It does." There was a pause. Then Seo-jun said something quieter. "You should stay." Daisy's expression shifted slightly. "Stay?" "Yes." He didn't elaborate immediately, but the meaning was clear. Not just for the project. For what? She asked. Seo-yeon met her gaze. For this. That was all he said. Daisy looked at him for a long moment. Not surprised. Not uncertain. Just thinking. You don't usually ask people to stay, she said. No. And this isn't about work. No. She nodded, slowly. I figured. Another quiet moment passed. Then Daisy asked, and if I don't? Seo-jun didn't look away. Then I'll respect that. No pressure. No expectation. Just truth. Daisy exhaled softly. You've changed. Seo-jun tilted his head slightly. Because of you. She shook her head. No, she said. Because you allowed it. That was more accurate. He didn't argue. The music shifted slightly in the background. Soft. Unintrusive. Exactly the way she designed it. Daisy looked around one more time, then back at him. I'll stay a little longer. Seo-jun nodded once. That was enough. No need to define it further. No need to rush it. They stood side by side as the night continued. Not as CEO and consultant. Not as strangers. But as two people who had found something unexpected in the middle of something ordinary and chose not to walk away from it. After a while, Seo-jun leaned slightly closer. Not touching. Just enough for his voice to lower. Stay, Nuona. Daisy smiled, blushing again. This time, she didn't look away. All right. And just like that. Nothing dramatic happened. No grand confession. No sudden change. Just something steady. Something real. Something that didn't need to be rushed to matter. The hotel remained full. Alive. Exactly as it was meant to be. And somewhere within it, two people stood close enough to feel the shift they had created. Not just in the space around them, but in themselves. Sometimes, the right person doesn't come into your life to impress you. They come to slow you down, challenge you, and show you who you really are beneath everything you've built. Kim Seo-jun had everything, status, beauty around him, control, but none of it felt real, until he met someone who didn't try to fit into his world. And Daisy? She didn't change herself to be chosen. She stayed exactly who she was, and that's what made her unforgettable. The real lesson is this. The right connection doesn't feel forced, loud, or rushed. It feels easy, honest, and quietly powerful. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Daisy should have stayed with Seo-jun long-term? Or was she right to take it slow? And be honest. Have you ever met someone who changed you without even trying? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it.